At exactly 5:18 in the morning, on a cold October day in 2025, a Ukrainian MiG-29 sliced through the gray sky at low altitude. The pilot, call sign Hawk 17, stayed just 10 meters above the river's surface, flying so close to the water that his jet left ripples behind. On his radar screen, nothing appeared. On the ground, everything seemed quiet. And to Russian forces stationed ahead, the morning looked routine. But 23 kilometers northwest, a massive Russian dam stood like a concrete fortress above the landscape. It wasn't just a dam, it was Russia's hidden highway. Every day, truck convoys rolled across it, carrying ammunition, fuel, drones, and soldiers deeper into occupied territory. Destroying that dam bridge meant cutting one of Russia's most important supply routes. And Hawk 17 had just received the most dangerous order of his career: fly directly into Russia's air defense zone, survive the incoming missile storm, and deliver a single bomb that could change the entire front line. He took a deep breath, adjusted his altitude, and accelerated. And as we get into this mission, remember to subscribe, because what happens next is one of the boldest airstrikes of the year. On the Russian side of the river, Colonel Sergei Morozov sat inside a reinforced bunker studying his screens. His sector was protected by a long chain of air defense systems. He had a Tor M2 battery guarding the dam, a book system covering the valley, several Pantsir units for close-range defense, and above all, an S-400 launcher positioned on high ground that could track anything flying for nearly 200 kilometers. Russian soldiers were confident. They believed the dam crossing was untouchable. Their doctrine said no Ukrainian aircraft could survive coming this deep without being detected long before reaching the target. Everything looked calm until a radar operator noticed something strange. A faint signal, very low, very fast, very close to the ground. The operator reported it immediately. Morozov dismissed it at first. Probably birds, he thought. But the signal kept returning, bouncing between ridges and river curves. The system struggled to classify it. Not a bird, not a drone, something bigger. Morozov leaned forward. If it was what he feared, then a Ukrainian jet had somehow slipped past their outer radar net. While Russian radar focused on that faint signal, nobody noticed the real danger. Ukraine had deployed a truck-mounted electronic warfare unit on a remote hill, broadcasting controlled noise to mimic false aircraft positions in the opposite direction. Russian radar screens showed false jets, where none existed. Meanwhile, Hawk 17 flew silently through the valley. His mission was powered by one big advantage: the French-made AASM HAMMER guided bomb, capable of gliding long distances even when launched from low altitude. Hawk 17 needed only a single clean release, and the rest would be handled by precision targeting. The cost balance was extreme. Russia had millions of dollars in air defense lining the valley. Ukraine was sending one pilot and one bomb. And before we continue, if you're enjoying this breakdown so far, hit that like button. It helps more people see the truth behind this war. If Russia shot Hawk 17 down, the mission would fail and Moscow would keep its secret highway open. Supplies would continue flowing. Attacks would intensify. If Hawk 17 succeeded, the dam would be disabled, supply lines would be cut, and Russian forces in the region would suffer a major logistical collapse. Both sides knew what was coming. Both were preparing for impact. At 05:22, Hawk 17 dropped even lower, flying inside a narrow canyon. His speed held steady at 890 km/h. The aircraft's shadow danced along the canyon walls. He checked his fuel, countermeasures, and bomb settings. Everything was stable. He could feel the mission tightening around him. Above the canyon ridge, Russian radars kept scanning. but their detection angles couldn't see anything below the cliff line. Hawk 17 was invisible. Inside the Russian bunker, Morozov grew nervous. His operators reported unusual reflections, the kind caused by terrain masking, not birds. Something was moving, but they couldn't pinpoint it. At 0524, a Tor M2 operator finally caught a glimpse of Hawk 17's heat signature. Not enough for a full lock, but enough to sound an alert. The Tor's tracking radar tried desperately to follow the fast-moving jet, but Hawk 17 kept dipping behind terrain, vanishing, then reappearing for fractions of a second. Morozov ordered all batteries into ready-to-fire mode. Red lights activated across the valley. Soldiers rushed to their stations. Meanwhile, Hawk 17 heard the first warning tone in his cockpit. He whispered, "They see me." His heart raced, but his hands stayed steady. And if you're still watching, make sure you're subscribed, because the next moments define this entire mission. At 0526, the Buk battery launched the first missile. A loud roar filled the valley as smoke burst from the launcher. The missile shot upward, banking toward Hawk 17's last known position. Inside his cockpit, the missile warning siren screamed louder. Hawk 17 slammed his throttle forward and dove just a few meters above the river. The missile tried to track him, but lost lock as he disappeared below the radar cutoff line. Russian operators panicked. If they couldn't track him, they couldn't kill him. The second missile launch came from a Tor system. Hawk 17 responded instantly. He released a burst of chaff, thin metallic strips that exploded behind him in a wide cloud. The missile's radar eyes became confused, seeing dozens of false targets. Hawk 17 made a sharp left roll, pulling the jet dangerously close to the canyon wall. The missile veered into the chaff cloud and detonated harmlessly. Inside the bunker, Morozov slammed his fist on the console. Why can't anyone lock him? Because Hawk 17 was using modern tactics Russia hated: speed, terrain masking, and unpredictable maneuvers. For the next minute, the valley turned into a deadly maze. Hawk 17 zigzagged through sharp bends, rising only when necessary to clear terrain, then diving again. Russian radars caught brief glimpses of him, but never long enough to fire accurately. Pantsir autocannons on the ridge tried shooting manually, but the jet moved too fast. The tracers flew behind him, lighting the canyon walls with streaks of fire. Hawk 17 saw the fire through his canopy, but stayed focused. He was now just 3 minutes from the release point. Battery life on his targeting system flashed green. Everything was ready. If you're impressed by this pilot so far, comment "Respect" below. It helps us grow this channel. At 0528, Hawk 17 faced the most dangerous threat, the S-400. The long-range system had finally positioned him in its detection corridor. Its radar was powerful, capable of tracking him through terrain breaks, and it fired a missile designed for high-speed kills. The S-400 missile launched with a thunderous roar, climbing high into the sky before curving sharply downward like a predator diving toward its prey. Hawk 17 had seconds to react. His onboard system screamed. His jet vibrated violently. He pushed the stick forward, banking right, then left, then down in a tight spiral. The S-400 missile closed rapidly. At the last possible second, Hawk 17 fired his infrared flare countermeasures. 4 bright burning flares shot behind him. The S-400 missile got confused. It locked onto one of the flares and exploded in a flash of fire. The shockwave shook the jet. Hawk 17 grunted from the force, but regained control. He had one final message from his onboard computer. Target window, 15 seconds. He reached the release point. It was time. Hawk 17 climbed slightly, leveling out at the perfect altitude for his AASM HAMMER bomb. His targeting system locked onto the dam. The giant concrete structure appeared crystal clear on his screen. He double-checked the wind, adjusted the glide path, and pressed the release. The bomb dropped, then deployed its wings and glided forward silently like a predatory bird. Hawk 17 immediately banked right and descended back into the canyon to escape. The Russian side realized too late what had happened. Every remaining air defense system attempted to track the incoming bomb, but it flew too low, too fast, and too precisely. At 05:29:14, the AASM HAMMER slammed into the southern support column of the dam bridge. A massive explosion erupted, throwing debris into the air. Flames burst from the impact site. Concrete cracked, steel bent. The entire structure shook violently. Russian soldiers screamed and scrambled for cover. Trucks parked on the far end of the bridge began sliding as the surface tilted. A huge hole opened in the roadway, and the bridge deck partially collapsed. The strike succeeded. The dam bridge was now unusable. It would take Russia months to rebuild, and their supply route was gone. And if you're still watching, make sure you subscribe. This mission deserves every bit of attention. As Hawk 17 flew back toward Ukrainian airspace, he finally exhaled. His jet was battered, fuel was low, and warning lights still blinked across his cockpit. But he was alive, and the mission was complete. Behind him, smoke rose from the destroyed bridge. Russian engineers rushed to the scene, but there was nothing they could do. Supply trucks backed up for kilometers. Ammunition deliveries halted. Troop rotations stopped. Reinforcements were stranded. Russia's entire front line felt the shock of that single bomb. Inside the Russian bunker, Colonel Morozov stared at the damage in disbelief. He had lost the dam and his career. Reports flooded in of critical shortages. The blow was deeper than anyone expected. For Ukraine, the strike was a major victory. One pilot, one bomb, and one perfect run had achieved what weeks of artillery couldn't. Hawk 17 landed at his base 40 minutes later. Ground crews surrounded the jet, amazed it survived. The pilot climbed out, exhausted but proud. He knew the strike would be remembered as one of the most daring missions of the year. Russia tried everything to stop him. Missiles, radars, traps. But Hawk 17 won. And that is how a single Ukrainian jet changed the battlefield overnight. If you want more stories like this, told in simple, clear English, hit the subscribe button right now. New missions, new analysis, and new updates are coming every day. And trust me, you do not want to miss the next one.